Shokai, you're muted.
Okay, I'll be unmuted and see if I can get both. Nope. So, maybe you can see me, I can't see you, but do not praise self or blame others. This is like the previous one, do not dwell on past mistakes, but it involves other people, praise and blame. Not dwelling on I versus you is all about interacting with other people. And for me, it's a very daily familiar thing. If I look at what someone is doing and I think, I wouldn't do it that way, I know a better way. The challenge right there is, can I be silent about that, or do I say something out loud? How does that play out? Can you give some examples yourselves of not saying something when you might, or having said something, wishing maybe that you hadn't? I'm thinking that this is pretty universal, but what do you think? Maybe not?
Actually, I have something I've been trying not to say all day.
Yes.
I live in a duplex. I bring the garbage cans out to the curb, and my neighbor in the other unit brings them in after they've been collected. And she like totally hasn't done it for a day and a half. They're just sitting out there. And I swear to God, 5 times I've picked up my phone to text her, bringing the garbage cans. Mind you, I'm working on the precept of generosity while I'm not bringing in my own damn
Yes.
So all day long. But I've restrained because I don't, it feels like it would be unskillful.
And a problem, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 There, yeah. That's a real good one. I hadn't thought of it in that way. I'd actually thought about it in the way where I would say something or do or reach in. Gosh, have you ever reached in, said, "Here, let me do that. You're making a mess of it." Not a good idea, huh?
I've done that a lot. And I think it's always a bad idea because sometimes you can be helpful. Maybe it's in the presentation.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have decided I need to ask. I'm very likely to just do it. And he'll say, I could do that. It's like, I need to ask, would you like me to do it? That would solve the issue very simply, but I forget.
Yeah, I have asked, and then I have forgotten, and I've been told, buzz off, or worse.
I mean, is it
and
always...
that's not just with my wife, that's with other people. It's not just yeah, I've reached in, and I suppose, can I think of a time when I've asked, do you need help? I think that's a good idea. I might try to remember that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, like you can say, do this, like bring the cans in. Or maybe they're going through some traumatic event and for some reason they're not bringing the cans in, especially if they usually do. It's sort of,
Yeah, maybe not with the garbage cans, but maybe with other things. If you lean in and say, maybe I understand that this isn't something that you're able to do right now.
right. But when I was married, I think I even said this before, I would get mad and just do the thing that I felt that the other person should do in an angry way, and and it didn't make anything better. It made things probably worse. So
I understand that. Yeah. Yeah, not dwelling on I versus you. Well, does it ever happen that you knew better and you said, this is a better way to do it, or you reached in and then later on you realized that the person you corrected was on target and you were not? I mean, and that that's sort of the reverse of not praising self and blaming others. It's a realization of, oh, I stepped in it there.
I was on the other end of that yesterday, actually, where the person, I won't get into the details, but it didn't feel good. I got to tell you. So yeah, and just another quick thing too, and I think I read this in the book Being Upright, and I don't know if he was referring to this particular precept, but I think he was, and it makes a lot of sense. Like in the context of this conversation, especially that the idea of this is to practice right speech. And there's the whole, there's like that whole, almost like you can make a flow chart of when to practice right speech. And I can't remember the details of it at all right now. But basically kind of from what just my understanding of it is basically don't say anything. I mean, most of the answers to the, the flow chart is don't say anything unless it's just the right moment. Like, basically, if that makes any sense at all.
That's asking an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's like basically like there's a right moment to say, even if it's the right thing to say, make sure it's said in the right, moment, the right, with wisdom, I guess is the word maybe I'm trying to say.
That would be very good if that, whenever that happens, that's wonderful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends said that if he felt like saying something, he went through three things. Does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? Or does it need to be said now? And does it need to be said now by me? So, and just think about those before you actually say anything.
Yeah. Or even do anything. I was thinking, sometimes you need to reach in and stop something without saying anything, or somebody's trying to do something. I can identify with this one. A fire officer was trying to get a flow into a hose, and it wasn't succeeding. He was pulling on the valve, and I reached in and said push instead of pull, or maybe that was opposite, and it worked. But I felt like I should have done it a little bit differently, because he was a senior to me, and it was almost like I was showing off. That was tough. Did you ever come across a situation where somebody else made a mistake, or you have made a mistake and somebody else gets the blame for it? It was sort of a third party looks at both of you and assumes that the other person screwed up, but and it was really your mistake. Do you fess up on that? Does that ring any bells?
Well, the 10th step in AA says taking a daily inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. And that had been very, 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 very difficult until about the last 5 or 10 years. I mean, for 40 years, forget it. I was not going to admit anything.
I understand that. Yeah, I think.
Shokai, your story about the button and that you weren't sure it was okay to, or that you had helped because the fire chief was senior to you.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. My husband flies, and so he reads a lot about plane wrecks. And and he said that in small that a lot of plane wrecks or accidents, even if they're not big wrecks, could have been avoided if the co-pilot had spoken up, but co-pilots oftentimes don't because of that reason.
Rank. Yeah.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah.
It's like a really strong taboo to speak up against your commanding person, I guess.
Yeah, I'm thinking that in fact I jumped in where I, if I'd thought about it, I wouldn't have. I'd have done it differently. But you're right, and that we don't like to see those wrecks, plane wrecks, or.
But you didn't think about it. You just like spontaneously did
pretty much
right action, probably.
Pretty much right. Reached in and grabbed a hold of the thing. You're right.
I think that's called intuition. And I mean, we're given that, all of us. And that's just the flow of being present and doing the right thing. I think it is right action. And it can, in some circumstances, save lives, including your own, or keep people safer. So intuition is, it's the gift we have. So I don't think, our thoughts get us in trouble. So when we ponder, sometimes we lose the opportunity of time.
Yeah. I think that's good, and as long as it works, and you're. I mean, there was another time when I reached in, and my colleague said, "I knew what I was doing," and he was hurt. Let me introduce something else to you. I just posted, I think I posted in the chat, I don't see as much as I wanted to post, so I'm going to try it again. Oh, that's not, I'm not seeing my posting. Okay, it used to work. Used to work. Um, Thich Nhat Hanh's many precepts for interbeing says, do not say untruthful things for the sake of personal interest or to impress people. Do not utter words that cause division and hatred. Do not spread news you do not know to be certain. Do not criticize or condemn things of which you are not sure. Do not, well, what that amounts to is gossip, right? It's the bread and butter of our internet.
Shokai, you got about 2 minutes.
Okay. I was thinking that well, I was thinking that the social media, which I don't know much about, I don't spend a lot of time with it, is rife with this problem of praise self, blame others, mostly blame others. Uh, uh, view with alarm is a phrase that I think I heard from my family. An opportunity to think twice before saying or posting anything. As a matter of fact, that's been a great piece of advice since the invention of email. Don't click send till you think about it. How will this be received? So having lost the thread, that's it.
Thanks, Shokai. I'll start. So I'll read the precept. Do not be mean with dharma or wealth. Can you guys hear me okay, or should I put my AirPods on? You're good. Okay. Do not be mean with dharma or wealth. Share understanding, give freely of self. In the genuine, all-pervading dharma, being jealous of nothing is the precept of not being mean with dharma or wealth. One phrase, one verse. That is the 10,000 things in 100 grasses. One dharma, one realization, that is all Buddhas and dharma ancestors. From the beginning, not one thing has been begrudged. So I signed up for this one in part because Shokai did it last year and we talked about it and I've been thinking about it ever since. And the other piece was, I think that what we're doing here with the precept study, each of us kind of offering our experience and our dharma, our teaching around the precept is such a great manifestation of us as a sangha practicing this piece about giving freely of self. In our little breakout room, I was joking with Penny and Shokai that like at 6 o'clock tonight, I was like, I don't want to do this. I just want to watch Ted Lasso and eat leftover cake. And it put me in touch with the incredible bravery and courage it takes to give freely of self and how vulnerable that can be. So I guess I just wanted to start by saying how grateful I am that we're doing this. And that really almost all of us are having that experience of being nervous. So I put on my glasses. So the other thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this precept in particular was this other teaching called the 6 perfections, or the 6 paramitas, which are generosity, morality, concentration, energy, meditation. I don't know if I already said that one, and wisdom. And in the course that some of us are taking with Joshin on Saturday mornings, we've been talking about the paramitas, so they're fresh in my mind. And the paramita of generosity feels like the foundation for this precept. And I remember the first time I encountered I think it's Pali or Sanskrit word is dana, D-A-N-A. And when I first encountered this, I was at a retreat, and we were encouraged to offer dana, to honor the Dharma teacher and our practice with a gift, not with payment. And I remember really noticing that as a relatively new practitioner in Buddhism. It felt very anti-capitalist. You know, that part of me that's saturated in capitalism was so surprised by the notion that the teacher would trust that I would make an offering that was appropriate for me, appropriate for her. And it totally shifted my relationship with offering money for anything dharmic. Because I really started to understand how it was the practice of dana, the practice of generosity, is a way to honor our practice and honor what's being offered, which is very different from paying for something for me. So I kind of went with the pyramid of generosity, and when I was thinking about this precept, and there's lots of directions to go, but if I have time, there's 2, or at least I'll go in one direction. So one interpretation of how this precept might show up is sharing of oneself. The Diamond Sutra begins with this lovely passage describing the daily activities of the Buddha, which I will read. So this is like the very first verse. I think there's 32. This is the first one. One day before noon, this isn't the exact start, but it's like one paragraph after. One day before noon, the Bhagavan, the Buddha, put on his patched robe and picked up his bowl and entered the capital of Shravasti for offerings. After begging for food in the city and eating his meal of rice, he returned from his daily round in the afternoon, put his robe and bowl away, washed his feet, and sat down on the appointed seat. After crossing his legs and adjusting his body, he turned his awareness to what was before him. Now, my understanding is that this is a super important sutra in our literature. And then like the rest of it, I'll show you, like, it's a big book. Most of this commentary by Red Pine. But I think one of my favorite things about Zen is how it's like this practice of nothing extra, nothing special. It's about how I put my robe on, how I wash my bowl, this exchange of begging for rice and being given rice, and then sitting down and turning to what's right in front of me. I find that teaching really helpful. And I can see this in this precept, I can see the encouragement to share of ourselves in how we interact with folks every day, and how we hold a cup, and how we speak to our cat when we first wake up, the other day for me, it was how I was putting my hands on the steering wheel as I was driving into the Safeway parking lot. I just had this moment of like, what would it be like if I held the steering wheel with reverence? Like, how can I make that offering to the car and to my hands, and it made me drive a little better in the parking lot. So I love that about Zen, that it's like, how do we how do we show up in our daily lives in a way that shares our Buddha nature? And so I thought a question we could maybe start with is, how or in what ways are you sharing freely of yourself? And by that, I mean your Buddha nature, your liberation. So like my example was my hands on my steering wheel. I just had this moment of like paying attention to how I was holding the steering wheel. Nothing super profound. And yet it changed that whole moment for me. Does anybody else have any examples?
For me, sometime when I'm feeling present, in terms of, listening to that little voice that says, oh, I don't really want to do this, and see a neighbor who's, I know, having a rough day, and I don't want to be there if she's ruminating on not a good situation. And then this little voice said, go anyway, do it anyway. And it turned out it was the right time for me to be with her for the next half hour. And I was grateful because I learned some things and learned to at least listen, because she wasn't complaining, but she brought forward something else that was heavy on her plate and on her heart. And so it was the right place for me to be, because I complimented her courage rather than me saying, oh, I'm going to avoid that negative. I was protecting myself.
So I feel weird talking about this because I don't want to like brag about what I'm doing or whatever. But I got to say, I think for me, this is the hardest precept, because I just, it's hard for me to give. I guess, I don't know why. I think it's just maybe some karma, I guess, for my past and stuff, but I tend to hold on to things, and it's really hard for me to give, you know. It's something I'm really always working on. And but recently one of my friends slipped on the ice, and in December when we had the ice, and shattered her arm, like her elbow and her wrist, her right arm, and she can't drive, she can't do anything. And so just there's something inside of me that was like, I need to help her. So I've been driving her to her appointment, like on the Monday. Monday's my one day off, so I've been taking her to her appointments and making her dinner, you know, because she can't cook, and it just felt like the right thing to do. And it's kind of like really weird for me to do that, because I don't usually, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just very like, I need to have my Mondays to myself, and you know, that's the kind of attitude I usually have had, and it has been hard. I mean, there has been a part of me that's come up and said, oh, you can't do that thing that you've been, you know, I don't know, whatever thing it was I've been wanting to do on Mondays, you know, I've had to push it off. And so there's a part of me that is coming up to the surface and complaining about it. But then there's like a deeper part of me that is like, you know what, she needs somebody to help her, you know, and you're available. So you know, do it, just do it. And so that's been a really very fruitful experience and helpful. And yeah, anyway.
So can I comment on that? Is that okay? So what that strikes me is there's somewhere in Buddhism, I don't know where, there's a teaching about fearlessness, and that the way to cultivate fearlessness is through generosity. It's having the courage to say, I'm pretty sure I need this. I'm pretty sure I can't give this up, and then giving it up anyway. It's kind of like a layperson's version of renunciation. Renouncing comfort, renouncing even the notion that you need to have all of Monday off. So I think there are like 4 stages in developing fearlessness, and that's the first one. It is I love that teaching because it is a form of fearlessness. Other ideas?
So giving freely of self could get you in trouble in the conversation that we were having with Shokai of giving help when, maybe it's not wanted. That's just an observation, but I loved what you said, Kemyo, about the kind of courage it takes to be doing what you're doing and what we're all doing with the precepts. And I really appreciated you saying that it takes courage to do that. I asked for some help with a horse that I'm training from my trainer, because trainers have trainers, and I kind of had to battle with myself to ask for help. And then once I worried a lot about how I was going to receive that help and how I would feel about it. And was it going to feel like a criticism? And I got a lot of performance anxiety. And so I loved what you said because it made me think, well, that was kind of giving freely of myself. So thank you for that.
I think there's this wonderful quote that I was sent by a yoga studio I sometimes go to, and I've been sitting with it. I was like, oh, this will be great for tonight. It's by a medicine woman named Brenda Saldago. I don't know much. I looked her up on the internet. She seems lovely. But anyway, this is the quote. The plant people have taught me to be generous and not be shy about blossoming. That is our nature. I think when others see us, it can inspire them to open up and blossom too. And we can be a field, ablaze with dignity and beauty together. I just love that. It feels so much to me like it resonates so deeply with me with my experience of the Sangha and being and practice and blossoming and how one person witnessing somebody else blossoming. I feel this in AA too, is inspirational. And then there we are, a field ablaze with dignity. So the other part of generosity, some people have been quoting Diane Eschen Rossetto, who wrote a book about the precepts. She also wrote this lovely book about the paramitas. It's called Deep Hope, Zen Guidance for Staying Steadfast When the World Seems Hopeless. I think I bought this at some point during the pandemic. So she writes about generosity as the spiritual practice of giving and receiving. And how we're doing on time. I'm just going to read a brief part of it. So this is a little bit of like what Teiko was saying about asking for help. We can give ourselves the opportunity to be fully present in the experience of anger, aware of our clenching teeth and tensing muscles. We can give ourselves to the experience of the heavy body and tearful eyes of sadness. To open our heart and minds to our experience is a form of giving and receiving. When we open to our experience in this way, we relinquish the boundaries, the holding on, Instead of drawing our circle in closer and tighter, we lean into its circumference and question deeply held requirements in the self's thinking about how it should be or how it needs to be. This is generosity. When we give ourselves the gift of relinquishing that requirement, we open up the space to turn toward the experience of what's happening. And we open to those experiences. This is generosity, openness, acceptance, allowing. So that piece in the precepts where it says nothing has been begrudged. I'm curious about that. How do we begrudge ourselves the opportunity to receive? How do we sit with the discomfort of receiving or of giving? And how is that like a form of generosity to ourselves?
I really like that idea of receiving as generosity, because you don't think of receiving as generosity. And it does, you know, I think it helps other people when we ask for help, because people want to help. I would rather give than receive. I would rather, help somebody else than ask for help. That's one of my hardest things to do. And then I never thought of it being generous to ask for help. So thank you for saying that. And Teiko, your story, I like that.
There's a part about you said the Buddha going out with his bowl, but there's a part that I had read recently that said the monks are basically obliged to receive because it allows the community the pleasure of giving. And that's kind of what you were saying, Penny, too. I mean, receiving graciously, is a part. There's a circulation, and it has to keep circulating or it doesn't go anywhere. So
I'll close with this, which is the mind-blowing part of all of this foundation of generosity. I wanted to focus on like what it looks like in the relative world. How is this a practice that we can do just by cultivating a particular intention and then paying attention? But then there's also a teaching about how there's no giver, there's no receiver, and there's no gift, which is kind of the absolute view, which doesn't help me as much in my daily life, except during those moments where I'm curious about if there's another way to think about a situation. And then that opens up all sorts of possibilities. For me, that just opens up a tremendous amount of possibilities. What if there's no giver? What if there's no receiver? What if there's no gift?
I was thinking about that with the part from my precept, when they manifest the noble body, there is neither inside nor outside an emptiness. That the person, I'm taking my precept as two people, the person you're dealing with already knows. He's already part of you. And you can't do anything that doesn't involve both of you. I don't know how to say that, but you were leaning into emptiness again.
I think you said it beautifully. If I imagine there's no giver, no receiver, no gift, I'm really intimate. I'm in touch with non-separation.
Yeah.
And what does Thich Nhat Hanh call it? Interbeing. So like Mani is not separate from her neighbor who broke her arm. And Teiko's not separate from the trainer, and I'm not separate from my neighbor who still will not bring in those goddamn garbage cans. That's it. That's all I got.
Nicely done, both of you. Any last comments for the evening?
And I think everyone gave freely of themselves, and that was lovely. I feel like I have a lot to think about.
And then next week we have Peter and Teiko with the last two precepts. And then I'll follow the week after with a wrapping up. Abiding in this ephemeral world like a lotus in muddy water. Mind is pure and goes beyond. Thus we bow to Buddha. All Buddhas throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, mahaprajna, paramita. Good night, everyone. It's good to see you.
Good night. Thank you, Kemyo. And
Take care of yourself, Joshin.
bye.
Thanks, guys. Hope you feel better, Joshin.
Yeah,
That was lovely.
that was lovely.
Lovely.
Bye,
And I'm
Rachel.
great.
Oh, Rachel left.